So welcome back, everybody. My name is Paul, and I've talked a lot about various aspects of the world transition for about 25 years now. And I talk a lot about using our own common sense to figure out some of these issues because we're not all trained scientists or experts in different fields. But we all have a good brain, and we have a way to use our intuition and assemble a lot of information together and use our common sense. And I talk a lot about climate and other major issues of our time. And I recently made another video about climate and discuss how preposterous it is to figure out, to imagine that we can actually control the climate. Now, stop and think about this for a little minute. The Earth is really, really large, and it's been going on for a really long time, and long before we had all this discussion of climate change and all that. You read history and learn about the history of this planet, and you'll see that, boy, man, there used to be some really strange and large animals on this planet, and a whole lot of animals that don't exist anymore, and a lot of plants too. And one of the major causes of extinctions on this planet is actual climate change. Long before we started running our SUVs and having our barbecues and all that stuff, we had various major changes on the planet that scientists acknowledge that, hey, for example, I discussed in another video the end of the ice age when 1 million cubic miles of ice on the North American continent melted somehow. It wasn't all at once, of course, but, it started to melt, and, that raised sea levels around the world for hundreds of years. Now, we don't have all that right now on the planet. We don't have a big, huge glacier covering on North America. So we're not expecting that sea level going to rise right away anytime soon. Now, I've talked a little bit about CO2, and I want to encourage you to listen to some other experts on the field, because that's where I get my information. I listen and listen and listen to many, many experts, and then I convey that information and connect the dots and encourage people to use their common sense. CO2, there's more CO2 in your living room right now per parts per million by far than there are in the atmosphere as you go outside. So if you're worried about all the CO2 out there, better get outside, because inside it's even worse. So now, I mentioned in one of the other videos that the CO2 actually is a consequence of the heating, of the warming. If the planet warms up, the ocean releases various kinds of evaporation and so on, and carbon and oxygen. That's CO2, carbon and oxygen. We need oxygen because that's water and air. We need oxygen for sure, and we sure need carbon because carbohydrates are made with CO2. So we definitely need CO2. And I also mentioned in one of my other videos that if we get too low on CO2 percentage in the atmosphere, actually the plants will start to die, you see, if it gets too low. So in a way, having more CO2 in the atmosphere, the plants grow faster and they release more oxygen, and well, everybody's happy. Now, I want to apply the use of common sense to some of the other factors that are going on the planet. And one of the things I mentioned was that if the seas are really rising, then why aren't they building big ships and getting everybody ready to evacuate and all that? So it's not going to happen anytime soon. And people are building on the ocean fronts all the time. Boy, you can still sell waterfront property any day of the week. If you can't, if you're a realtor, I'm a realtor in real life, in my daily practice here, and I tell you what, I can still sell some oceanfront property in Virginia Beach very, very easily, and I don't think the people will be saying, oh, I don't know about that, the seas are going to rise. But out in the countryside where you have flood zones, they look at the 500-year range of floods. Well, see, the 500-year range of floods is something that people might think about when they buy property, if it's near a stream or a river or something like that. But on the ocean, they don't even think about that, because they know that in 500 years, they haven't seen the ocean rise much at all. You see? So it all comes down to common sense. Now, along related to the climate is the whole issue of what we're going to do about it. And now they're trying to push everybody to electric cars. Now, I want to talk a little bit about electric cars for a minute because I studied electronics when I was much younger, and I have a pretty good knowledge of electrical things and some of the technology involved. And an electric car sounds really great. Oh man, I don't even have to buy that gas. I just get in my car and I drive around on sunshine. I drive on sunshine, and people don't think very carefully about really what's involved in the technology. You see, because to get electricity for that electric car, you got to burn coal or natural gas or something like that. And nowadays, if you have a generator and to charge up your electric car, you probably use diesel. So now you're actually adding another layer of energy use. You got to get all that coal. You got to pay for the trains and the diesel trains. There aren't any electric trains that haul freight. Not every single day, a big huge train full of coal comes out of West Virginia, and I live in an area where it comes right through. Every single day, there's a train full of coal, and where do you think it's going? To produce electricity. Every single day. Now, you're driving along in your electric car, you think, oh man, I'm saving the planet, but you don't know where that electricity's coming from. Now, another thing about electric cars is the chemicals that are used to make those giant batteries. First of all, there's cobalt and lithium. Now, both are very dangerous chemicals. They can be fires, and boy, if you have an electric battery that big, catch on fire, it'll burn and burn and burn. If you have a whole ship full of electric cars and it starts burning, boy, it's going to burn and burn and burn because of those batteries. And those batteries don't last forever either. Eventually you have to replace them, and they cost a few $1,000s to replace. And then where are you going to dump them? Where do you think there's going to be a landfill somewhere where, okay, I'm going to take I got to get a new electric battery for my car, and it's going to cost me $3,000, and now I'm going to call up the company and have them recycle my $3,000 old battery and take it to a dump somewhere, put it in the landfill or whatever they're going to do with it. But I'm driving on sunshine and I'm saving the planet, so I got to get a new battery for my electric car. It's all kind of ridiculous, don't you think? Now, in addition to that, you have the chemicals. Cobalt is a rare chemical, relatively speaking, and there's only a few places in the world, as far as I know, that they mine it, and they use very cheap labor, often children, to mine this horrible chemical, and they just dig in the ground and mine this stuff. And there's literally not enough cobalt on the planet to make every vehicle, every car that we have into an electric car. So how do we ever have electric cars? We can't. There's not enough material for it. And it's just going to be very expensive. And China controls some of these materials because they go around the world and they buy up all the rights of these minerals. And now they have the rights and they make sure everybody pays a good price for it. So electric cars are not the dream that people imagine. Now, on a practical level, a lot of people live in cities, and maybe they drive to work 25 miles, and they go up to work, park their car, they can plug it in, they go, their office has some big charger somewhere, and then they go home, they charge the car up at night, and all's well, because then maybe on the weekend they drive another 100 miles, and it's fine. They charge up the car on Friday night and go off for the weekend, and they come back after the weekend, and their car is fine, they plug it in, go to work on Monday. But out in the countryside, there's people who are making the food and driving trucks and making tractors and farms, and they can't use electric vehicles. You don't see some of the big-ass pickup truck hauling their cows off to market with an electric truck. And I tell people, look, one day just drive around during your normal day, and every single car that you see, I've been up to Washington, D.C. area many times, and I drive around there, and I go, man, there's a lot of cars. I might see 10, 15,000 cars in one day. Imagine every single one of those cars plugged in every single night, trying to charge them up. Do you think there's going to be a power shortage? Do you think there's going to be a power? If there's 1 million cars plugged in every single night around Washington, D.C., what do you think the power need is going to be? Plus all your computers and electric heating and fans and every damn thing, electricity, the air conditioning. there's going to be a brownout. We don't produce enough electricity to charge all those cars. So it's going to be a long time, practically, to convert to electric vehicles, and it's not even possible. It's just not even possible. Mechanically, physically, scientifically, it's not possible to have billions and billions of electric cars, trucks, ships, and planes all being plugged in. They don't have any electric planes. And you, believe it or not, your electric car, you ship it over from somewhere, it's going to come on a big ship burning diesel. So there's a lot of fallacies and a lot of really distorted thinking involved in this whole Green New Deal thing. So I urge people to get into it a little bit more and find out some more of the details, because it all sounds like a dreamy world. Oh, we're going to drive around electric cars and everything's going to be powered by windmills. Let's get into windmills for example. You like windmills? The windmill blades on them, some of them are 100 feet long. They're very, very expensive. Many of them are made of fiberglass, and they're special design, and they take a long time. They're very expensive to move, to transport, and to install. So then you have this huge, huge thing with 3 100-foot long blades just spinning around, making this noise, and it's turning a generator. Do you think it lasts forever? Do you think there's no maintenance on those things? There have really, literally been, those blades can catch on fire, and then you have a damaged blade, and where do you think they put that damaged blade? Well, they just have to bury it in some landfill somewhere, because it's fiberglass and it's going to take a long time to dispose. It might be 100 feet long, and next thing you know, you got to take 3 of them off a windmill and put them in a bin somewhere, in the dirt somewhere, and hopefully, maybe in a couple 100 years, it'll rot and go back to dirt. That's the reality of windmills. Plus, they don't turn all the time, and boy, in real estate, nobody wants to live near a windmill. Nope, 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 nope. Just like those big, huge power lines, even a windmill is even worse. At least a power line is quiet. The windmill keeps going day after day, spinning, making a noise, and maybe catching on fire, killing birds, and nobody wants to live near a windmill. There are farmers who will tolerate living by a power line. I live out in the country and I see power lines. And yeah, somebody's got a power line going through their property, and it might lower the value a little bit of the property because it's got a power line on it. But boy, if you put a couple of windmills there, nobody's going to want to live there. So they put these windmills way far away. And guess what? Now you got to transmit that electricity all the way to the town where the windmill is. I saw a bunch of them out in Wyoming. I think it was some place I was driving out there, Midwest, in the West one time a number of years ago, and I saw a whole bunch of windmills. I think it was in Nevada or somewhere out there. Bunch of windmills, but there's nobody around there. So maybe they're powering some underground base or something. Who knows what they were doing? But wherever you produce that electricity, it's got to travel a long, long way. And a little bit of electricity here, okay? When you make this electricity, say even hydroelectric power through a dam or any other source, you got to transmit it to the city. And it's got to lose power. So it might start out as thousands of volts, but by the time it gets to your house, it goes to a transformer near your house, and maybe step down to 220 and gets distributed locally to a small town. And then you put it in your house and you just step it down to 110. Maybe your dryer or something uses 220. And then when you power your computer or something, you're only needing 12 volts or 5 volts or something like that. And then you plug in your USB and you use one of those little chargers with a little box, and that's wasting electricity right there, because that's stepping down 110 electricity into 12 volts. So you're losing power there. So all that electricity, a massive amount of electricity, is produced at the power plant and transmitted for hundreds of miles, and losing power every single mile, and then stepped up through these very, very expensive transformers that they make, and they're very, 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 very expensive. And if one goes out, one of these big, huge transformers, one of the power stations near your home, where they step it down, okay, then it's got to come to your house and get directed all through the walls and everything, and then you plug in your little phone and charge it up with 7 volts or 10 volts or something like that. You see how much waste is involved in that? Now, if you want to produce solar on your own property, okay, then you don't have to transmit it very far. If you have some kind of a small wind generator and some kind of a solar generator on your home, it takes thousands of kilowatts to power a standard home. And if you look around your house and you have like so many power outlets and they're all 100 different items plugged into your walls, you multiply that by millions and millions of households, and then you see that electricity comes from hundreds of miles from where you're using it. You can see there's an awful lot of waste in the use of electric power. Now, if I'm driving down the road and I'm on a country road somewhere, and I drive a lot of gravel roads sometimes. I'm a realtor in the country area, and I drive around some very rural properties. If I run out of gas, hey, I can solve that problem. I go up on a neighbor, find his tractor, say, hey, you know, you got a couple of gallons of gas. I can pay you. I'll even pay you $10 a gallon for the gas, and you know, give me a little gas, and I'll get to town. I'll get some more gas. No problem, no. But if you have an electric car, man, you got to call a diesel tow truck to tow you to town, and then you got to charge it for a bunch of long time and maybe a few hours or more, and you wait for it to charge, and you can drive again. See, electric cars don't make any sense, really, except for local areas. Yeah, they make sense for certain things. It's like you can't apply one solution to everything. You can't say every big tractor has to now have an electric engine. Can you imagine putting an electric tractor to pull a huge, huge combine? How are you going to do that? Where's the battery? The battery's going to be like 10 times larger than a car battery. You can power a vehicle like that with diesel. You can't power a vehicle like that with a Tesla battery or something. It's not going to work. So gasoline and any product, fuel product has come from oil is extremely vital to our civilization. You can't have billions and billions of cars be replaced. Imagine all those little motors. Imagine having no gasoline mower, no gasoline chainsaw, no gasoline weed whacker, no gasoline generator, none of that. Everything, imagine everything electric. Man, you're going to have massive, massive power plants and also local generators and solar up to wahoo and everywhere you got. You're going to have a whole bunch of stuff because windmills don't work all the time and solar doesn't work all the time and hydroelectric even. Now we get in Nevada, like the Lake Mead is dropping because the hydroelectric, they use so much water and now the dam doesn't even have enough head there to produce a good power. So electricity is not the sunshiny thing for solve all the problems in the world to do to pollution. There's another aspect about electricity that a lot of people don't think about, and that is the electric waves. You have what they call dirty electricity, okay? You know, you can't see it, right? It's a kind of pollution. It's like electromagnetic waves that are spurious and coming from cell towers and coming from your phone and coming from your Wi-Fi and coming from if you're in an apartment building, there's all these wires going up the walls and inside your house, and every single one of them is producing a electromagnetic field and different kinds of spurious electric stuff affecting our health. Our body depends on electricity. We have a very sensitive body to electricity. You have static electricity, you can get the hairs on your skin to rise up, okay? Just by a balloon with a little bit of charge from your head, from your hair. Now imagine how much power is coming around some of these big apartment buildings. Imagine a whole apartment building with 100 units and every single one is filled with Wi-Fi and radiation coming out, and it's affecting our skin, it's affecting our body and our brain and everything. Just that you're living in that soup of electric fields. It's not healthy. You go out in the countryside, you see trees and everything, and all those kind of things modify that, okay? They kind of like dissipate some of that electrical field energy. But when you live in an apartment building or condo or something, and there's hundreds of units in some of these buildings, like, it's just incredible. And then they put a cell tower with all these antennas that are in cell towers. A lot of people don't understand. They look very innocuous sitting there, and I drive by them on the highway and I see these big, huge things. And for me, I know a little bit about electricity and electronics. So I go, man, that's like dangerous thing. Man, it's horrible. A microwave is 1 billion times a second, okay? Gigahertz, billions of times a second. Try to imagine how much power is that, billion times a second. And any engineer, any electrical engineer will tell you that microwave energy is dangerous. That's why we put shields around our microwave ovens. Microwave energy is the tiny wave microwave, billions of times a second. And to make sure the signal process is right, it has to be accurate, right? So every time you make a text, it has to be totally accurate. Every piece of data has to be accurate. So it has to saturate your home with this Wi-Fi, with this mist of radiation, with this mist of electronic field radiation, and you're walking around it all the time, especially in a big apartment building. And then, just so you can have your phone, just so you can listen, just so that one text will go through properly. So we're sacrificing a lot of our health by depending so much on electrical devices. For example, the modern car. A modern car is filled with all these motors and everything, and every single motor, every single time the window goes up by electronics, it's just producing a little bit of electrical field around, and just fills up the whole car with this and a Wi-Fi, and now your phone's listening to you, your car's even listening to you, and you can talk through your car to your phone and all this nonsense, and it's not healthy. It's just not healthy. And that's the world we live in. But we have to use our common sense, because there are a lot of people who think, well, I got to be an engineer and I don't understand that, so I'll just depend on CNN to tell me what it's all about. But they don't really tell you the truth, you see. So I urge people to do their own research and go off and listen to some other information that conflicts. See, us so-called conspiracy theorists, the people like me who've been talking for years about this stuff, we're called conspiracy theorists, and people say, well, where do you get your information from? Well, honestly, you would have to listen to a few thousand hours, then you could maybe understand where I'm coming from. Then you ask them, well, where do you get your information from? Well, I guess I got it from CNN. I didn't get it from Fox. I don't listen to Fox, okay? People ask me, oh, did you listen to Fox? Or if you have any contradictory opinion to them, oh, you must listen to Fox. Fox is a crazy place. You can't listen to Fox, So I listen to people who tell me the truth. I will listen to someone who tells me the truth. I don't care. I want to know the truth. Bad, good, whatever. I want to know the truth. And I get into some of these issues in some of my other videos, but I really urge people to think for themselves and use their common sense and just think it through. Because we have the ability, we have a brain, we can figure these things out. A lot of it is just common sense. Is it healthy to fill up your home with Wi-Fi and live in the Wi-Fi and sleep your head next to the phone and put the phone next to your head all the time and just always depend on electronics? Is that healthy? No, it's not healthy. Of course it's not healthy. You got to get outside and get in the trees and ground yourself and be close to the earth and touch the ground, touch the animals and be participant, because there's a factor of grounding. You see, in electronics, there's a safe place, and that's called grounding, okay? That's why they have lightning rods on homes, because they take the power of the lightning and it directs it through a wire, big fat thick wire, and down into the ground, okay? That's it. Saves your house, okay? Save your body by grounding yourself to the earth and touching things and having magnets around your house. The magnets tend to ground electronic fields, and having trees around your house. So use your common sense to think about these things, because we're being pushed down this way of all green and all these big windmills and solar things everywhere, and everything's going to be nice and clean because you won't be burning any of that diesel stuff anymore, and everything will be all happy and save the planet. That's not the reality, okay? You see, because when we burn carbohydrates, when you have a fire in your backyard, that's no different than a forest fire. It releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere because plants are made of carbon, and there's water in them too sometimes, especially, and they release all that into the atmosphere when you burn. So by all means, have a nice fire and save the ashes for your garden because it's got lots of nice minerals in it. We're being sold a bill of goods. We're being bamboozled, and I really talk about this in some of my other videos, but we have the right brain. We have our own clarity. We have our own common sense. We can figure these out if we just have to allow ourselves to think a little differently and not be going along with the so-called crowd, the sheep. So thanks again for listening. Please like and share. I appreciate all the feedback. I put my 2 cents out there because I think it's very, very important. We live in very serious times, and unless we get it straight here and figure this out and ground ourselves, and we're going to be bamboozled right on off the cliff into this crazy world. So I hope people listen to some of my other videos, and thanks again for listening.